Well, the great storytelling. I mean, I just didn't know Tolkien's work at all. I mean, I knew of Tolkien, of course, but I'd never read anything. I'm being absolutely honest about that. I had not read anything. And in fact, it's through The Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, that I actually started to read. I decided to read the Real McCoy. And he's a considerable writer. I also think there's a lot of Celtic elements to him. It reminds me of, it does remind me of Ireland and Scotland. There's something very about the territory, about the physical space, the physical of the land, which is why, of course, New Zealand, being very like Scotland and Ireland, is a perfect place for it, So, no, it's he's just an incredible storyteller, and it's rich, it's a very rich experience, and the Rohirrim are really interesting because that was a sort of kingdom that was fairly, as much as it could be, social in its sense, and he got it working. He never, he inherited it, he not by blood, just by being a great soldier, Helm. So it was a huge responsibility, and he built it up into something extraordinary. And of course, the problem is that once a warrior, that is your fallback state, and that's the problem in the thing that, he still fights on that level, and it's kind of the patriarchy gone nuts, basically. And I love it, the fact that he closes the door on it. It's a wonderful image of him closing the door and protecting her because he's closing the door. And it's also him realizing that he's part of a world that's hopefully on its way out. Sadly, it's not on its way out. It's never been more prevalent, unfortunately. But it's a brilliant film in that aspect. No, my references really were Shakespearean, because I've done a lot of Shakespeare. I played the Scots King, I played King Lear, I played Titus Andronicus, I played Brutus and Julius Caesar. So I know the dynamic. I understand the dynamic. It's kind of mother's milk to me in many ways because of my training. So it completely fitted the bill, really. And of course, I love voice acting. I mean, I love the voice, and radio is one of my passions. I mean, and we still have a radio culture in the UK. There's a BBC drama Rep. I've done a radio series now, which I've done on and off since 1999. I started it, and that's a long time. But that's the great thing about radio. It always pulls you back, and it focuses you because it is about the voice, and it's how you create a character through the voice. So it's familiar territory to me. No, it's not a different preparation. It's the same in a way, but it's much more focused because it's about the voice. So that's what you've got to focus on, and you have to use the voice to its maximum range, even though it's filmic, because in fact the actual outward appearance is Kenji's department, and that you don't have to worry about that. All you have to worry about is literally delivering the lines, and delivering the lines with the right dynamic, and actually embracing that dynamic. And a lot of actors don't have that range, and I've been blessed with that range. So it fits the bill.
The biggest challenge, I think, was finding the right form to tell an animated film and then actually finding the right story, marrying those two things together. So the form of anime, and then the idea that it could be this story about the Rohirrim and Helm Hammerhand. I didn't know whether it was going to work together. That was always going to be an interesting challenge, because it's like you have an instinct that maybe this will work this way. And also, I was a little nervous about it too. There was a challenge that, are we treading some of this. You know, we've already been to the Hornburg and Two Towers under siege. Do you know what I mean? How are we going to make this story different? That was a challenge. But in the end, they were all good challenges. There was never a moment in making this film where I felt like, I don't know what to do here. You know, like, I don't know how we're going to fix this. You know, it always felt like actually the story just kept getting better as we went. And that had a huge amount to do with the fact that it was in the hands of such a brilliant director as Kenji Kamiyama. 2019, I think around 2019 is when Warner's first raised the idea of doing an animated film. And I was actually more skeptical about it than Peter and Fran. I think they immediately kind of saw what the possibilities that were there. But it actually did take us a while to land on what kind of form that animation was going to take. And it wasn't until one of the execs, Sam Register at Warner Brothers, proposed, what about anime, that this particular story popped into my brain. You know, I was like, oh, actually, yeah, I think I know what story we could tell. We were looking, because part of the problem was we were looking for a standalone story. We didn't want this to be part of either of the trilogies that have already happened. So we're looking for a standalone story. We were looking for fresh characters. You know, we wanted to bring new characters into the world. We didn't want to have to use one of the characters that were so familiar to the audiences to anchor this. And we also didn't want this to be a story that involved, Rings of Power or Dark Lords. And so, again, this particular story seemed to fit the bill there. I learned a lot. I learned how much I didn't know about anime. There were many times, I have to say, when I would say to Kenji and to Joseph, I don't know what I'm looking at. I don't understand. Because until things are rendered, until they're finaled, you really have to understand what the boards are doing. There were a lot of times where we just had to trust the process and let the animators kind of catch up with the storytelling. And but he never let us down. Every single time those new shots came in, they were beyond what I imagined they were going to be. So, but I had to learn, that anime, the actual physical process of making it, man, you really need to know what you're doing with your story, because you don't get reshoots in anime. It's such a laborious, beautiful, painstaking, hand-drawn process. I'm not sure if you know, but one of the producers on the film is Carlos Ramirez Laloli, and he is Mexican, New Zealander, Mexican Kiwi. So there's a bit of Mexican DNA in this film. You guys produce such brilliant directors, especially in the realm of animation. Guillermo del Toro is one of my all-time favorite directors.
It was a lot of fun. It also felt like quite a daunting prospect, because it's a character unlike anything we've seen in the lore before. And I really wanted to do her justice. But I had such a wonderful support system with Kenji and Philippa and Phoebe and Artie. And I really got to explore her and her character and the way that she interacts with those, in the world around her. So it was really exciting.
I did look at a few people in terms of their arc and character traits that I thought, ooh, there's some mirroring there. But when you've got Freyalaf in front of you, and we had such a wonderful script, where a lot of depth and dimensions to all the characters that are in it was provided to us, thanks to Artie, Phoebe, and Philippa. I really just concentrated on what we had in front of us, but I couldn't help, because I'm a fan, of looking at, ooh, that's something that maybe Aragorn would do. Ooh, I see little patterns emerging. But that's just the fan in me speaking.
Yeah.
The professional has to put that to the side.
I've been calling it like long-form verbal tennis, because you lay down a track and then you bash, like I bash it over to Lawrence, and then Lawrence would go, oh, that's what she's done, you know, in this particular scene. And then he'd lay down a track and he'd bash it back, and I'd go, and it was sort of, it turned into a sort of very slow ballet, I think.
Yeah.
A dance.
The longest rally in history.
Longest rally in history of tennis, absolutely. But it was a really, I mean, unlike anything I've done before, when it came to, you know, you're not in the room with anyone, or we weren't in the room together, and so it takes a lot longer, because you know you're waiting for them to respond, but it was lovely to act to, actually, because you knew what they were bringing to the scene, you knew the tone of the scene, and so then you could sort of dance around what they'd already sort of put down.
There's something quite beautiful about and unique about doing it this way, because you have someone else's voice in your headphones, so you're completely enveloped. Everything else is cut off, and all you can hear is your fellow actor's voice. Whereas when you're on a stage, obviously you've got the muttering of the audience and the crick and crackle of the floorboards or whatever it is, where it's just their voice. That's the only thing you can hear, so you're totally enveloped in your partner's voice, as it were. And then of course all you have to give back is your voice, so you become solely reliant on that thing. It was a unique way of working. But I'm glad that you thought that we had good chemistry. Was that the word you said? Good chemistry?
I just love the power and ferocity of Hera at the end of the film. You know, proper fierce energy, and I really loved that, and it was really fun to do as well. It was really fun to kind of get into that.
I have to say the same. I mean, like charging into battle on top of a horse and screaming at the top of your lungs doesn't get more empowering. I have to say.
そうですね、ピーター・ジャクソン監督のトリロジーがとっても素晴らしい映画なので、それを改めてアニメーションにしていくっていうのはどういう方法があるだろうと考えた時に、まずフランチャイズであるというところをもう最大限生かして、彼らが CGI で一度作っている設定とかはこう全部貸してもらってですね、それを一度我々もアニメーションの舞台として 3D 空間にそれを再現して、エドラスであるとかホンブルグ城であるとかっていう今回のメインの舞台になるところを一度 3D 空間上にこう組み上げてから、そこにこうキャラクターを置いてカメラを置いて一度実写を撮影するようにこうカメラワークを作ってからアニメーションにしていくという作業をしています。丸3年間かけてこの作品は作られているんですけれど、プリプロダクションの段階も含めてなので、従来アニメーションの映画を作るスケジュールでいけば決して長い方ではないんですね。実写映画を撮ると考えると長いんですけど、アニメの映画で考えるとなかなかスケジュールがなかった、短かったんですね。その中で2000機の騎馬兵であるとか、こう軍勢ダンレンディングの軍勢と戦うシーンであるとか、ホンブルグにこう民衆が立てこもってそこでこう敵の攻撃をこう受けるまでこう立てこもらなければいけないとか、アニメーションで表現するとしてもとても難しいこの物量の部分ですよね。そこをこの短いスケジュールの中でどうやって実現していけばいいかっていうことをまず考えて、もうそこが、そもそもその方法どうやって作るかっていう方法を発明すること自体がある種一番難しいプロセスで、僕が今まで こう培ってきたデジタルの技術、例えばモーションキャプチャーであるとか 3D を使ってアニメーションをするとか、ベースとして作るとかっていうことを、あと 3D 空間でカメラワークを決めていくっていったことも、そういったものも全部使って最終的にハンドドローイングの作品アニメーションとして作り上げていくっていう方法をこう作り方も同時にこう発明しながらこの作品を作ってた3年間だったので、一番大変だったのはもうこれをどうやって本来作り上げるかっていう、もうそれ自体が本当に大変なチャレンジでした。